Hannah Catherine with Edie's Stitch. Today I have a stash busting block that I am so excited to share with you my results on. I was searching through all of the glorious YouTube content and all of the different channels that I follow, and one of those channels is Lori Holt. Now, I think Lori Holt is a genius. She is just incredible in all that she is able to accomplish and do as a creator, a designer. She crochets, she cross stitches, she sews, and she gardens. I think she does so many different things, and I was really inspired by some of her projects and also her take on different vintage blocks and the things that her grandmother or her great-grandmothers or other family members have taught her and that she is still implementing into her current crafting. And so one of the videos that she shared, I will link it down below, was the broken dishes block. Now, I have, since I've been in the world of quilting for about a year now, I keep hearing about stash busting. And as a new quilter, I don't really have that much of a stash. To be honest, I'm still in that phase where when I see a quilt that I want to make, I am going online and I'm picking out my fabric, and I'm left over with a little bit, but not so much. So as of right now, I don't have much of a stash, but I did have a charm pack that I did not know what I was going to do with it. It came as a little bit of a freebie in one of the Black Friday purchases I made through Fat Quarter Shop. And to be honest, this charm pack just wasn't my style. The fabric was super cute, but it just wasn't really me. So when I stumbled upon this Lori Holt video yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect use for this charm pack. So I can try out a new block, a new technique, and if it doesn't work out, no worries. It's not like I'm wasting money or I'm wasting fabric that I really love. And turned out, after I made this block, I actually really loved it. And so I'm going to show you my process in how I put this together as a beginner quilter. It is certainly not perfect, but at the end of the day, I enjoyed making these blocks so much that I finished with 8 of them. And so they're just a green, a yellow, black, gray, and white fabric, and they feature a lot of national park imagery and designs. And anyway, as I was making all these blocks, I thought of a family friend who has actually requested a quilt for me, and I promised her I would get one to her at some point in time. But then when I put this together and she had told me, I guess it was around Thanksgiving this year, that she liked green, I was like, oh my gosh, this would be absolutely perfect for her. So let me take you on my little journey of putting together my broken dishes block. All right, so here you'll find me at my table going ahead and taking apart this charm pack. Again, this is Timber from Moda Fabrics, and it really did play beautifully in my squares, even though I wasn't sure exactly if that was going to be right for me. I'm not typically a fan of writing in my fabric. I don't know, I just generally prefer imagery to writing, and I certainly struggled when deciding between what low volume fabrics would work as background and which would not. I had some background fabric in my stash, so that worked out really nicely, but I definitely wanted to use as much of this charm pack as possible because, as I said earlier, this is a stash buster, and so I didn't want to be wasteful. But you'll watch me go back and forth on deciding, okay, is this a color? Is this background? What is this? Am I saving this for later? Yeah, watch me here, and I probably did it a couple more times. Then when I got down to my last couple of blocks, I switched it out again. So anyway, some of the fabric squares were easier than others, but as you can see, I'm just kind of going through the colors and sorting them out, and also getting in mind, okay, what's going to work together, what's not going to work together. I'm learning a lot from color placement these days, finding out that generally high contrasting fabrics together look really, really good. I did a sew along where I found out pretty quickly that when my accent fabric was looking too similar to my background fabric, that was not a good look. So again, learning with experience. I'm a new quilter, and so that's been a lot of fun, but not so fun when you're sitting there with a seam ripper trying to replace fabric. So anyway, I have my fabric here sorted for the most part, and then I will go ahead and start cutting. Now, as you see to my right, I have my rotary cutter, and then I also have a couple of rulers. I have a 2.5-inch ruler, and that was great for squaring up any suspicious looking 2.5-inch squares, as well as a 4.5-inch ruler, which again was very helpful in squaring up my broken dishes blocks that I would put together to create the 8-inch block. And I thought that would be big enough, but it should be obvious to you that a 4.5-inch ruler is not going to help cut a 5-inch charm square. So I did have to pull out my handy dandy larger ruler to do my cutting. Now, one thing I am trying to work on is accuracy, and you'll see me mess that up a little bit in this video, but again, this is a scrappy quilt, so I'm taking this as an opportunity to learn a little bit more. So here I go, cutting through my black, my green, my yellow, my white, and the beauty of a charm square is that it's a 5-inch square, and so all I had to do was just cut in half and then flip that half and cut in half again, and my pieces for my quilt were perfect. So here I am laying out my colors for the block, and I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm taking those squares, that 4 patch, and I'm stitching together the contrasting top 2 squares, so the accent fabric and the background fabric, and just using a 1/4-inch seam. And I'm stitching those together. Now you can chain piece. I struggle a little bit on my machine to chain piece. It's just the anatomical makeup of it makes it a little bit difficult. And so that's why I just separated them. But after I unfolded them and laid them out together and was happy with that, I took them to my pressing area and pressed the seam open, used my tailor's clapper to make sure they were nice and flat, and then took them back over to my sewing machine and stitched those 2 halves of the square together, again with a 1/4-inch seam. Looks great. So I did press most of my seams open, especially when those seams are crossing. I just find that a lot of bulk seems to gather in the middle when you have those 2 seams, one on top of the other. So I really spent a lot of time pressing here. And also I got this iron for Christmas from my grandmother, and I've really enjoyed using it. So I might be spending a little bit more time at the iron than normal if I wasn't still so excited about my new toy. And this was definitely something that I let cool under that tailor's clapper to get it nice and flat. So I took my 4 patch back to my sewing machine, and Lori gave a great tip. She said color should always go on background and background should always go on color. So that is what I did here. And you'll watch me spend some time getting my placement correct. Sorry about the ambulance in the background. That's perk of living in the city. And I just stitched right down the middle of that square. Now that tape on my machine was very helpful for that, but of course you could use a friction pen or whatever sort of marking tool you prefer for that. I just like the tape because it seems to go a little bit faster for me. Now in terms of accuracy, I'm not sure if it is the most accurate way, but so far so good for me, especially while I'm still learning. So here I am matching those stripes up with my last square and making sure it is even on all sides, and putting it back through the machine and stitching right down the middle once again. So now I was really excited and opened up my block. I am going to go ahead and just trim off the back of that square at about a 1/4 inch, although here it looks like I did more, about closer to 1/2 inch, but 1/4 inch is generally something you can kind of eyeball for this because it's not like it's going to show up. And I'm getting rid of those scraps. Those are not scraps that I'm going to keep. Now, when I went and made more of these blocks, I did go ahead and take this block to my ironing board and press it. But here, again, I was pretty excited. This was my first one. I went ahead and just finger pressed it. I wanted to keep sewing. And so you'll see me putting my background squares on top of my colored squares and just repeating the same process by sewing right down the middle of those squares and using my tape as my marking device. Just checking it out once again to make sure everything's lined up. That's the worst, when you just go ahead and stitch everything and then realize a little bit too late you need to go back in with your seam ripper. So I am getting a little bit better at checking things as I go, and also being a little bit more picky, because when I sew, I want it to be enjoyable, but I am also a little bit of a perfectionist, and I've tried to push that away in my hobby time. But I'm also realizing that, I don't know, I think there's a balance, right, between enjoying something and also creating something that you're proud of. So I'm trying to bridge that gap between my natural tendencies and also just enjoying the time that I have to sew. My creative time in my craft room is generally my favorite time of the week, so I'm trying to be a little bit more mindful of my steps so I can really be proud of what I put so much time and effort into. So now I'm just taking this block back to my ironing board and ironing it out. I'm not pressing open those seams. I'm just pressing them to the side like Lori did. And that is a broken dishes block. I created 4 of them and put the colors toward the center to make my beautiful 8-inch squares. And so all I did was just repeat that process for all of the 2.5-inch squares in my charm pack. And so my charm pack, as well as the background fabric that I had on hand, resulted in 7 8-inch blocks. So I made 7 of these. I think I might go ahead and invest in a layer cake in this timber fabric. And also I was looking into Corey Yoder's, I think it's buttercream and slate, that line, which I think could complement really well. And so I would love to maybe put together a full quilt with these scrappy blocks, which, you know, to be honest, they aren't that scrappy when you're using a singular fabric line. But anyway, it was a really great experience. I'm so glad I did it. Thank you, Lori. This was a project that I had on hand that I didn't even know about until you, and I learned something new. So always into developing my quilting skills. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave me a comment. I would love to chat with you down there. And if you're enjoying this sort of content, please subscribe to my channel. I would love to see you back here for future videos, and that's the only way that my new videos will pop up into your feed. And don't forget to click the bell so you'll be notified when those new videos do post. Thank you so much for joining me in my craft room today, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.